Hello guys, welcome to the ultimate quick guide in Jenkins. In this tutorial, I'm going to build, test, and deploy a Jenkins application. Why do we want to learn Jenkins? Jenkins is a compatible CI/CD tool that helps you build, test, and deploy automatically. Jenkins has been the leading tool in the industry for years and is highly customizable. So with various plugins, you can do a whole lot with Jenkins. Without waste of time, let's jump right into it. In order to follow along in this course, you need a few requirements. Number one, you need a Linux server, maybe a virtual machine, or an EC2 instance, as we will be primarily building on a Linux machine. Secondly, you need Docker installed on your Linux machine. You can follow along with any other installation, but Docker is a preferred way of getting Jenkins on. So you need Docker, and then you need to install Jenkins using Docker. We'll go about that in a minute from the Jenkins official website. For the installation of Jenkins, I'll just go to the official Jenkins website. It offers you various ways in which you can install Jenkins for your platform. I'll go with Docker as it is the preferred way of getting Jenkins on. Remember, our number one prerequisite is that you have Docker installed. We would be installing Jenkins on the Docker container. To install Jenkins on the Docker container, we'll go about it together. From the documentation, it is quite self-explanatory. We'll get our Jenkins container running in a minute. I am using Linux, so I'll be going about installing Jenkins on the Linux machine. And for this, you can just basically copy and paste what you see. Edit strict preference if needed, but I would say it's better you go about it the default way. Okay, so we create a Docker network called Jenkins. We have our Jenkins network created. Check that with Docker network or network list. Okay, so we have a couple networks already. I have some networks on my own, but you can find the network we just created here. Jenkins. Moving on, install a container called Docker D. So we'll just go about the documentation and install this. First, copy and paste process too. And yeah, so we roll that. Well, if we'll pull that image, okay, see. Alright, on to the next thing. Basically, you can't just get this. We're just going to create a Docker file. I'll call it Jenkins download. So we can just say download. Yay! Download. Oh, we've got a picture log there, but that's just fine. Okay, we put that in our Jenkins file and we build our image from this. After we had created the Docker file, then all we need to do is build from that file. And for this, I'll just get this command and then we can build. Basically, you just run docker build and the name of your file, which was created earlier that had the code on it, and we tag to the my Jenkins to bloodshed name. This is the part where the Docker file is located. We have our Jenkins image built and our container ready to be run. We just copy this and then we have it pasted. Okay, copy. We paste this up. I'll say change this to the start. Always, just to make sure I have my Jenkins container always running at all time, even after I reboot. So we can confirm that our Jenkins image is set up and our container is running by running docker ps. Oh, fine. You can see that we basically have our Jenkins container running on port 8080. Congratulations, if you followed up this far, you have Jenkins installed on your machine and we are ready to swing in into Jenkins proper. Once you have your Jenkins container running, you can access your Jenkins software by going to your preferred browser and then typing in your IP address with port 88. Alright, so this opens up the Jenkins page and we need to insert our first time administrative password. For this, you have to go into your container at the exact location v/Jenkins home/secret/finish password. You can find your password there. So we can get into our container by running docker exec for container D. Container D. We are in and we can easily just cut it out. Alright, so I just got my password and that's it. We are creating our first admin user, so I'll go with Sabitech. Password, make sure you use a secure password if you're on a production server, but I'll just use anything. Since I'm running Jenkins on my local machine. Alright, so we have Tech story outs and across by email. Make sure you guys don't go spamming me on my email. I've been taking you through the Jenkins platform so you know what Jenkins is really all about. Click on settings and it takes you to the entire dashboard. Here we have it. Building on the in-node can be security. Sure, I would fix that up in a minute, but for now, we go along and see what Jenkins can really do. For system configurations, we have systems where we can configure nodes, which we are going to do very soon. You add nodes where you can run your builds. You can configure your system globally. You have various tools, and one of the most exciting things about Jenkins, you have varieties of plugins that help you perform so many actions. You can configure cloud. We'll go about it just in a minute, the difference between cloud instances and having your Jenkins run on some physical node. You can configure your fields and look just for your preferences. Security. Jenkins offer a whole lot. Credential management. Writing your Groovy Syntax, you can actually get credentials from here rather than hard coding credentials into code per se. You can check about system status, system logs, and statistics. I find this very helpful. You can troubleshoot Jenkins and you can reload Jenkins. Alright, so let's actually get into running Jenkins. In order to run your first build, all you need to do is go into creating a new build. You're going to start with freestyle projects. We'll see what that is in a minute. You give your project a name. I'll just give my first build. Okay. We have a couple things here which I'm going to talk about as we go on. You can just describe your project, whatever you want. I'll just say build. You can tell Jenkins what type of projects you're running and how you want Jenkins to execute. For now, we do not need this. Okay. It's usually ideal to run your Jenkins build from a Git repository. We will do that later on in this tutorial, but for now, we stick to having none. Triggers are just a way to alert Jenkins whenever your GitHub repository or your script has a change, and then due to that change, Jenkins tends to run your builds. We have various ways in which we can do this. You can build periodically. Jenkins just keeps building periodically at a particular given time, or you can set up a hook to your GitHub repositories. So what Jenkins does is that whenever a change is made to your GitHub repository, that a commit is made and your build is automatically run. But that can cause some problems due to firewalls, especially if you are running Jenkins on a local machine like myself, then you might have some problems. And for this, we can solve that by pulling SCM. So what this does is that it reaches out to your GitHub repository, maybe at every 5 minutes or whatever time specified, and then it checks are the changes to your GitHub repository. If there are changes, then it runs your build. We would go about this later on in the course, but for now, let's just run our first build. Okay, environmental variables, you can leave that for now. Add build steps, so you can execute Windows batch, you can execute shell, top level, Maven, but for now we just run simple shell scripts. This allows you to run simple shell scripts on your node machine. For now, every script you run is going to be run on your node which has Jenkins on it, or per se your container in your workspace. We'll talk about workspaces in a minute. But for now, let's just run a simple command. So let's list everything in our workspace. This is okay. You can save this. and just run build now. So we can see our build has completed. Okay, and we can check out the output of the build. All right, so basically we have an empty workspace. Let's try to edit that. Okay, so let's try to make sure our build gets us some results. But for now, we have our workspace to be empty. Okay, so let's do something like this. Let's make a directory called my build and list. Save this and fine. Let's build now. And okay, we just got the build ready. Okay, console output. So you can see we ran our build running as system, building in your workspace on your Jenkins blue container running on your machine, and we added a directory and we listed a directory. This is the output of our command. Congratulations, you have got through this tutorial and you have run your first Jenkins build. From here, we'll be hitting up more advanced concepts. So sit tight. What if we try to run this program again? What do you think our output is going to be? Okay, let's give it a try. My first build, let's build again. Oh, and this time we have a failed build. So I'm going to go into that and try to find out what the problem is. Oh, it says create directory, my build file exists. Now, in Jenkins, we have something we call a workspace. The workspace is where your build takes place. And for this build, we have selected our workspace to be my first build, as that is a workspace we created when we were actually creating this build. Now, everything about this build runs in that workspace. And for that workspace, we have already created this file in our last build. So creating this new build prints out an error. So we can actually inspect our workspace and we can see we have what? A directory called my build. What I can do is I can try to clear out my workspace, wipe out everything and run that build again, and it would eventually build. But I'm going to take you into the Jenkins container where I show you how you can manage Jenkins on your own and do some advanced troubleshooting. Even during this course, we're not going to be diving deep into it. So on my containers, I can just go into my container with exec batch, and then we are in the Jenkins container. We can go to cd/v/jenkins home, and we can ls. You find a whole lot here. So you can configure XML, you have your plugins, you have your secrets, and every other thing. You have your users. You can manage Jenkins fully from your container environment. But for this, we are just going to go into our workspace. Here you can find my first build, which is a workspace I just created, and we can list my first build. I'll find out we have a directory in there called my build, just to be sure that it is a directory. So I'm going to do it, and you can find out that it's actually a directory. this is just an intro so you know how far you can go with Jenkins in terms of troubleshooting, but we're not going to be diving into this in this video. But if you need a video like this, please let me know in the comment section. Back to our Jenkins server, we want to talk about actually building on the node. You can see workspace of my first build on built-in node. We could see if we move in here for our Jenkins manager that building on the built-in node can be security issues. You should set up a distributed build. So we'll display this as we'll be fixing that up just in a second. When you install Jenkins, all your builds are run on the node in which your Jenkins server is running on. In order to follow best practices, it's always good to configure other nodes where your Jenkins build will run, and will be orchestrated from the primary node, which is the server your Jenkins installation is on. So for this, you can add physical virtual machines or physical nodes. You go to nodes and then you add that. For these tutorials, we will be configuring cloud instances like Docker agents, where we can run our builds on Docker containers on the cloud without having to configure SSH. So for that, you want to install a plugin first called Docker. I already have that plugin installed, so all you need to do is type in Docker, and the first option that comes out, you click on this and install. So I have that plugin already installed. Which is Docker. I have the Docker plugins installed already on my machine, so go ahead and install that. If you had a successful installation of the plugin, you would see the Docker plugin for launching build agents as Docker containers in your Jenkins management dashboard. In order to configure your Jenkins to build on various Docker agents and Docker containers, we can come into clouds, but for now, let's check what's in our Docker plugin agents. You can see we have no active container or anything running yet. So we return to our Jenkins dashboard and we want to configure clouds. So we say new cloud. Maybe the name of your cloud, I'll just delete Docker agents. The type is Docker. I'm going to create that. We're going to configure our cloud agent so that our Jenkins server can actually reach out and run builds on that cloud agent. First, you can say the Docker cloud agent. What is the URI? Basically, the URI looks something like this. If you're trying to configure your machine to actually use a cloud instance like a Docker agent running on EC2 instance or Linode, wherever, yeah, you need to put this. And if you use this, and for this would be the IP address, a public IP address in which your server, which your Docker containers are running on, can be accessible. This will be it. And then the port specified. I'll show you how to go about this in a minute. Since we intend to run our agents on a cloud-based server, we leave this as it is, as a TCP connection rather than a socket, and we hit the advanced API version. We can leave that as it is, and we using the latest Docker version. Connection timeout, and leave all of that as it is. And for this, we want to put in our host machine. That is the IP address of the machine that your Docker containers are running and are accessible from. So we test connection. and we get connection refused. Why do we have this error? Basically, we do not have any servers on 127.0.0 running Dockers. In order to fix this, we will have to go to your EC2 instance if you have one, your virtual machines or whatever machine in which your Jenkins server can actually have full connection to. Is it your Docker machine on the cloud? Is it your virtual machine in your local network? So you have to go to that machine in which you have Docker installed on it. Here's mine. On this machine, I have Docker installed on it, and it is fully network connected to my machine running Jenkins. Whatever agent you're going to be using, or whatever machine you're going to be using, be it a machine on your EC2 instance, or Linode, or maybe on premises, you want to make sure that your machine running Jenkins can actually reach out to that machine via a network. Okay, so for this, I'm going to check out my IP address. Oh, I typed it wrongly. Oh, we have a lot of IP addresses. This machine also runs Kubernetes. Okay, my IP address, the one in which you can reach out to this machine, is this IP address: 192.168.234.130. You better not try reaching out to me, as this is on my local machine on premises. I'm just going to copy that IP address. So that is the IP address in which you can reach out to my machine. And this machine has Docker installed on it. We can confirm that by saying Docker to be. Next, we want to edit Docker daemon and make sure it's accepting connections via a TCP port. For us to do that, we would edit the docker.service file. Before we continue with this, there are some security considerations you would have to put in place for a production server. The set up firewalls restricting IP addresses. You can maybe put it behind proxy, or make sure your Jenkins master and every other agent is configured to work on the same virtual private cloud. That way you can kind of isolate your agents so they are not accessible from the entire internet. Whatever scenarios, make sure you put up the required security considerations. So with that in place, let's move on. So I will do a sudo nano /user/lee/systemd/system /docker.service. Okay, and so we have our Docker daemon service file. And for this, I will go to exec start, and I will configure it to use a TCP port just by adding the H and then TCP on the IP address I want it to listen on. So basically that would be your IP address in which this machine is accessible from the internet. Whatever port you specify, I always recommend specifying ports above 1000, 3045. Okay, we can save this. Let's restart our daemon. sorry. This is meant to be daemon reload. Okay, and so we can restart docker .service to confirm that our machine is actually listening on the port we specified. We can run the ss to LT command. Okay, let's go through this. Okay, you find out that our machine is now listening on that port and is ready to accept connections. We can head back to our Jenkins server and configure this. So what we have to do here is specify our IP address. What ports we want it to be running on, basically 3045. Okay, and you're now setting up credentials. All right. Okay, we just specify our host. We can test connection now. Fine. We can see it connected to that machine, version of Docker 28.40, API version 1.51. All right, so we're good to go. We can enable this. We'll save this. We have our Docker agent configured running. We can go back, check Docker, and we find out that we have one agent configured. These are all the containers running in your Docker host, as your Jenkins server can now interact with your Docker API via a TCP port. But for now, we can only run our agents on the master node, which is our Jenkins.BlueOcean node. We can't run it on any other container for now, because for you to run Jenkins on an agent or a Docker node, Java has to be installed on it, and these are just my regular Docker containers, and they do not have Java installed on it. For the next part of this tutorial, we're going to create a container that has Java installed on it and every other package we need to build our application. I'm going to be building a nodejs application, so we need to install node and probably npm. We would need to create a Docker file to install all packages and dependencies we need. So for any container you intend to use as your Jenkins agent, Java must be installed on it. That's a prerequisite. Take note. Okay, for this, I'll just write a simple Docker file like the one we had earlier. So nano Docker file. That confirm that by tuning Docker images. Okay, so we have our nodejs app with the tag of latest. What we can do is run the container docker run. Docker run. We're going to publish it on, let's see, port 2000 to port 80. We'll give it a name or nodejs app. We detach it, just we give it a restart policy. Or always we specify the image, which is nodejs app, and we run that container. Now we can return back to our Jenkins server and refresh this page. All right, so you find that we have our nodejs image and that container is running. It was started 1 second ago. From here, we can now specify the container we want to run our images, and Jenkins will automatically build that image on this container as long as we have our Java installed on it and every other package or dependency that your application may need to build. Okay, so we come to cloud. Configure cloud. For this, we would have to add the templates, Docker templates. Okay, so we give this a label. Let's call it nodejs app. Name nodejs app. What image are we going to use? We're going to use the nodejs app. That is the image that was in our Docker CLD remote file system. Specify slash instance capacity. We leave that as it is. User endpoint. Okay, so I think we're all good to go. Okay. All right, we enable this. Pull all images every time. No, we want to say never for this, as we have our packages installed already. Okay. See. Now let's go back to our build and let's try to edit it. You find out that this option automatically comes out because we have our agent set up. So we can restrict where our project will run, and we'll do that by specifying the label. The label is nodejs app. You can see it automatically brings that out, and I'll just select that. All I would do is try to find out the version of node running. So I just specify node to be. So I'll save and build this. Okay, nodejs app is offline. Let's wait a few minutes and see it picks up. Okay, it picked up. And it's building right now. Okay, build complete. So I can check my console output, and we find out that started by Savitech tutorials running on system, building on nodejs application on Docker agents. This was a command we ran, and we have node version 18 installed on our machine. Next up, let's see how we can connect our build to a GitHub repository. Go back to our build. Our project would configure this. We'll just leave everything as it is. Build description. Okay, so let's add a GitHub repository. For this, I'll just copy GitHub repository. This is my repository. It's a public repository. I would leave the link to this repository in the description below. It's a public repository. We do not need to set up credentials. I'll leave it as it is. The branch is main. Okay, so everything good. We'll talk about triggers in a second, but for now, let's make sure we can actually pull our code from GitHub and run our builds. Okay, so for this, I'll just run a simple shell script. npm install. So we'll do npm build. We will run npm start. So we'll make that the background process. So we'll kill that process just immediately. We will run our build and see the output we get. Okay, so run build down. Let's wait a few minutes for the build to kick off. Okay, so we have our build already kicked off. So let's try to see the output. Let's monitor this build. The build started running on our Docker agent as usual. So we have it cloning our GitHub repository. This is the repository specified here. You can see cloning repository. And our commands are already running on our workspace, my first build. So we are installing dependencies. I'll go get some coffee while we wait for this to complete. So we have our build completed. You can see it installed in dependencies as we specified. It went on to run the build, npm run build. Basically, directly contains an nodejs project. So it cloned the directory, we installed the dependencies. So it ran the build on the project. You can see the build was completed and we actually started the container with npm start and we immediately killed that process. We successfully have completed our build by cloning our GitHub repository into our container and actually running commands based off the GitHub repository that we just cloned. This is a big step that you've just accomplished, and as we go further, I would show you more ways in which you can automate your workflow. I would like to say big congratulations to you as you have started your journey into CI/CD pipelines. The next step is for us to automate the process to build every time a change is made to our GitHub repository. Let's swing into action. And for that, I would go back to my build and let's configure the build. We would basically just go to triggers. You can click on this if you do want to scroll, and we have certain triggers that their functionalities you could build periodically. Jenkins tries to reach out to your GitHub repository and build periodically based on the time limit you've set. But eventually you set 5 minutes, then a build will always happen every 5 minutes. This can cause a whole lot of overhead and it might not be what you would. You could set up a GitHub hook for certain events, maybe a push, a commit to your GitHub repository and your build would run. But most times it's not always possible, especially if your Jenkins server or your Jenkins master is behind the firewall. The go-to method when these other methods do not fit your scenario is the pull SCM. Basically, what this method does is that it checks your GitHub repository periodically, but this time it doesn't build until there's a change in your GitHub repository. It's basically like building periodically, which is build periodically, but this time it doesn't actually build until it discovers that there has been a change in your GitHub repository from the last time it checked. We'll be using this method to automate our workflow. So anytime we make changes to our GitHub repository, we have our Jenkins master build our project automatically. For this, we would say it should build every minute. For that, we would just put an asterisk 5 times. But if you want to really know about how this works, then you can click on this for help. And it shows you how you can set this up yourself. So you can read about this. We're not going to go into that in these tutorials. Please, if you want a specific situation for the scenario, please read that up. We have this set up, and Jenkins master is going to always check our GitHub repository every minute, and if it discovers a change, it's going to run our build. All right, so let's see that in action. For this, I will just save everything as it is. Fine. I'll go to my GitHub repository and I'm going to make a change. I'm in my GitHub repository, so I will just try to commit to this read file, and let's see what happens. Okay, so let's edit this for this and just see something like hello world. Commit change, replace us, readme. Okay, so I just commit. All right, so we have our build automatically triggered because of that change. As you can see, it's building. So because we've already done this, I would just cancel this build, but you can see it works. Okay, so cancel that. Yes. So let's try to make another commit and see what happens. All right, so I try to make a commit on that repository. I just put hello, nothing really serious, and I'll commit my changes. I'll leave this as it is. Changes committed. Okay, head over to Jenkins and see the magic happen. Wow, and we have our build triggered automatically every time we make changes to our GitHub repository. For this section of the tutorial, we are going to be working with pipelines. Pipelines are a more advanced way in Jenkins of constructing your build and automating your workflow. It is the preferred method and the go-to method for more advanced build and control with Jenkins. So we are going to dive right in and work with building our own pipelines. For this, click on new project, give your project a name. I would say Groovy build, and I would select all pipelines, and I think that's okay to start what using pipelines. So I'll give my project my first pipeline as a description. We'll leave everything as it is for now. Leave triggers for now. And there are two ways in which you can build pipelines. The first way is writing your pipelines directly in your Jenkins master. And the second way is actually getting your pipeline script from SCM, which is probably your GitHub repository during build. But for now, we are going to focus on writing our pipelines in Jenkins, and later on we'll see how we can actually automate our workflow and get our pipeline from our SCM or GitHub repository. So moving further, I have my simple pipeline. I'll just copy and paste the code I've gotten already, and then we would walk through the code together. For this, we have pipeline. Pipeline is a way to specify that this is a Groovy pipeline script. So every script was start with a pipeline. We have agents. We could specify the agent we want to run our builds on. And for this, we say label nodejs app. Build usually have stages, and we named our first stage a build stage. And for this stage, we have different steps. These steps are basically commands you want to run during your build. For this, I'll just have a simple build that checks if we have a node version installed. So let's save this and run our build. Okay, build now. So we have our build running. So let's check that. Our build, what do we have? Okay. So we have our build running on our Node.js app or Docker agents as specified. We have our build and it runs our command as usual, and we get our Node.js version and it finishes with the success. The next part of this video, we are going to be running a Jenkins file from our GitHub repository. So for this, we can go back and try to configure our build. Leave everything as this. For now, specify the option of pipeline scripts from SCM. Go it, select Git, paste in your repository. I'll be pasting mine. I'll leave a link in the description below where you can find the Jenkins file. It's in my GitHub repository. It's a public repository, so we do not need credentials. Branch is made. Our script name, Jenkins file. So we save this and we can build. So we move over to check the output. Fine. You can see obtained Jenkins file from our GitHub repository, and that is the file we just specified. In our script path, it eventually closes our repository. And then we have our basic commands running. From here, we can run more advanced scripts in order to build and deploy. The next part of this tutorial, we are going to update our Jenkins file in such a way that we can build, test, and deploy to a live machine. To continue along with this part of this tutorial, first you need Git installed on your machine, your remote machine where you would like to deploy. You need to also install a Jenkins plugin called SSH Pipelines. For that, we would go to the Jenkins manager, go to plugins, go to available plugins, and we would say SSH Pipelines. Okay. All right. So this is the plugin, and I would go ahead and install that. And I want to make sure my Jenkins server restarts when this plugin is installed. So I'll go ahead and click that. Okay, so we just wait for this to install, and we'll be back when we have our installation completed. To continue along in this tutorial, I have prepared a batch script that will help us deploy our nodejs application on the server. It's a simple batch script. It just closes the GitHub repository and runs a few commands to help us start up our nodejs application on our remote server. For more advanced scenarios, we use automated tools like Ansible Playbook or Puppet to deploy our application. If you'd like to learn about batch scripting in Linux machines, you can leave a comment below. If you would also like a tutorial on Ansibles, please leave a comment below. With that, we'll be moving further. We have to ensure that no other application on our machine is listening on port 3000, because after the build, nodejs is going to come up on port 3000 on our remote machine. So we do not have any application listening on port 3000. Right away, I'll go into my GitHub repository and show you what our new Jenkins file looks like. In this tutorial, I'm going to skip the other stages and just focus on the deployment stage. Earlier on, we saw how to install Jenkins plugins, which makes Jenkins really customizable and powerful. Now we are going to explore Jenkins power that comes with using plugins. And for this plugin, it allows us to run remote scripts on servers or copy files to our remote server. It's a simple plugin. You can go through the documentation for this in order to really suit your own scenario. But basically, this is as simple as it can get. You give out your connection details and you basically run a script or run a command on your remote server. So for my own scenario, for my own case, I will just be running the batch script which we created. Okay, so let's head back to Jenkins and let's build. All we have to do now is build and check out our results. Alright, so we already have our deployment stage and our SSH command trying to execute on that remote server. Oh, you can see executing command on the username specified and the remote host IP address. We just have deploy.sh, which is our batch script running. Alright, so I would come back when this build is complete. Alright, so our build has successfully completed. Let's see what went down. So we had our pipeline command. We were able to run the batch script deploy.sh on our remote machine, clone GitHub repository, install npm packages, build, and then we started our server and the script completed. So let's return back to our remote machine and make sure we now have nodejs application running on that machine.
So I would quickly return back to my machine, and I'm going to type in the command. And fine, you can see we have nodejs application running on port 3000. We successfully deployed our nodejs application using Jenkins. In these tutorials, you have learned to set up Jenkins, run your first freestyle script, set up clouds in Jenkins, and run your builds on remote Docker containers. You have learned about Jenkins pipeline and how to write pipeline scripts with the Groovy Syntax. You have also been able to extend Jenkins capability by installing plugins. Finally, you have learned how to run CI/CD pipelines using Jenkins. If you enjoyed this tutorial and you would like me to make more videos like this, please make sure to leave a like and also comment in the section below. Thank you.